Okay. Erev Tov. We're live. We're ready to go. We're less than 4 days from Purim. In 4 days from now, we are going to be celebrating the Megilat roughly around this time, maybe another hour or so. But we're excited because it is a holiday that we look forward to. It is a holiday that we enjoy, and a holiday that we're mesameach. We read the story, Megilat Esther, twice on Thursday night, and again going to be on Friday morning. And today, I want to share some chidushim, some insights on the Megilat Esther. A whole bunch of little thoughts and ideas. Some of them are connected, but no question, something that we can learn from as we all try to find new and wonderful insights on this incredible story of Megilat Esther. I titled the class, The Man They Called Ahashverosh, because it's a man that doesn't get spoken about enough. Now, don't get me wrong, Ahashverosh was not a good man. And and we're going to see that as what we speak about today. The emphasis on evil in the story of Purim is generally on Haman. And for good reason. Haman was an evil man. He was the one that clearly in the Megilah was out for the annihilation of the Jewish people. He is somewhat a descendant of Amalek, depending on how you took my speech this past Shabbat, and whether it was he is or not, but he definitely held to the ideology of Amalek, and he gets that claim to infamy of being the evil man of the story. And people forget about Ahashverosh. People don't talk about Ahashverosh. And the reason why they don't talk about him is because from the Megillah itself, you don't know much about him. You actually think of him as this imbecile type of guy that doesn't really know what's going on. And you don't perceive him as an evil man, but indeed he is extremely evil. And the question I ask it to a lot of people, is why is that the case? Why does the Megillah not speak about Ahashverosh, as we're going to see in all of his horrible things that he's done? And the answer is very simple. Because at the end of the Purim story, Ahashverosh is still around. This is not a man an evil man that dies like Haman. He's still there. He's still married to Esther. And Mordechai, a Yehudi, writes the Megillah for everybody to know. He writes this Igeret. He writes his letter that everyone's going to read for generations. How do you think it's going to look if Ahashverosh reads this and Mordechai is trashing him and saying how evil of a man he is? Obviously not good. So Mordechai had to censor what he wrote about this king. It's just an obvious fact. He had to censor, he was still the king at the time. So he probably didn't write what he really wanted to write, the feelings about this man, this king Ahashverosh. But you should know that the Gemara and the Midrashim are not afraid of anybody. And they say, now that Ahashverosh is long gone, let us tell you a little bit about this man and how awful of a human being he was. The first glimpse of the description of Ahashverosh we find is in Masechet Megilat, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. The Megilat tells us that why is he called Ahashverosh? His name was not Ahashverosh. His name was Xerxes. That was his official name. Ahashverosh, Ahasuerus, okay? That's how we translate it in our scroll and other things, but that wasn't his real name. So why is he called Ahashverosh? So Rab says because he was the brother, he was the Ach of the Rosh, Ach of the head. And he copied his brother. Now who's his brother? It's actually not his physical brother, but it's a brother who he shared ideas with, and that is Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar Rasha, the Babylonian emperor or guy in charge who eventually destroyed the first temple. Now, the Nebuchadnezzar was a cruel human being. So much so that the Gemara Masechet Shabbat says about Nebuchadnezzar, Kol yamav she'oto rasha, all the days that man was alive, lo nimsas chok befeh kol birya. Nobody smiled, nobody laughed. They were so scared of this man that they wouldn't even smile in his presence out of fear of what this man would do. Not talking about Jews, talking about everyone. When he walked through the streets, there was fear instilled amongst every person that saw him. Even to the fact when after he died, they still feared him. The Gemara says, "B'sha'ah sheyarad oto rasha legeinam." After Nebuchadnezzar descended to Geinam, ra'ashu kol yordei Geinom. Even those in hell were trembling. They were afraid. Why? Shema limshol alehem huba. Because now we couldn't even avoid him, and now he's with us over here. We're done. In hell, it was going to be worse. This is how cruel a man Nebuchadnezzar was. And Ahashverosh was his brother. He was Achiv. He followed and wanted to copy everything that Nebuchadnezzar wanted to do. The Gemara Megilat says, Hu harag v'hu bikesh la'arog. Nebuchadnezzar murdered, and Ahashverosh wanted to murder. Hu echeriv, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed. Hu bikesh la'chariv, and he wanted to destroy. And that's Rav's opinion. Shmuel says, you know why he's called Ahashverosh? Shehusharu penehem shel Yisrael beyamav kishule kedera. Because he blackened the face of the Jewish people like the bottom of a pot. Like that's how in distress they were in his life, that the people had no color to their skin. It was almost as if they were dead. Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol shezochro omer ach leroso. Anyone who mentioned his name says, that's the brother of Nebuchadnezzar. Rabbi Chanin Amar, she'akol na'asu rashin beyamav. Rash, Ahashverosh, they became poor in his days, because of all the taxes that he imposed on the nation. And the Megilat begins with these words, Vayhi bimei Ahashverosh. And it was in the days of Ahashverosh. Says the Gemara, what's Vayhi? Vay vehei. Hu berishato mitchilato vesofo. Like, oy vavoy. This man was evil from his beginning all the way to his end of the days. So just to give you understand on what type of figure, what type of character we're dealing with in this story. A Meshuga. He's a Meshuga that killed his wife, Vashti, for what? Because she did not come to him and approach him when he called her. Because he wanted her to wear some inappropriate clothing, and she said not to. Just come wearing a crown, and she said no, and boom, he has her killed. So much so, even Haman, at the end of the story, Haman, I know we're jumping to the end of the story. We're not going to go through the whole story today. We're just focused on the beginning part of the Megilat. But at the end of the story, Haman is caught. Okay? And Esther says he's the guy. He's the guy that wants us all dead. Who does Haman go to try to get himself out of this? Esther. He goes to Esther, please help me, save me. Why does he go to Ahashverosh's best buddy? His best friend. This is the guy who gave him the ring. It's the guy who gave him all the power in the world. You would think that, but the pasuk says, "Ve'Haman amad levakesh nafsho me'eser al makah." He went to Esther because he didn't want to look at the guy. This guy is crazy. He's Meshuga. You don't know what he's going to do. And this is the crazy person. This is the metoraf that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts in charge in this moment of this story. Over 127 countries, Mehodu ve'ad Kush. There was never anyone such a lunatic as Ahashverosh. And now he is in charge of the entire world. He doesn't even know what's going on in his own house, let alone in the countries. Imagine you had a president or prime minister that ruled you, and he had no idea what was going in your country. This was the man. This was the man. And it goes on. He makes the capital city Shushan. Shushan was not the capital city. Shushan was like Sudbury, Ontario. That's what Shushan was. It was a town, it was a walled city, but it wasn't any major metropolis. But he made it a capital city. The Midrash explains why. What happened? On the pasuk, Keshevet HaMelech Ahashverosh al kiseh machuto. He was like sitting on his throne, B'Shushan Habira. The Vilna Gaon explains that it wasn't a bira, it wasn't a capital city, but Ahashverosh wanted to forget his past. Ahashverosh didn't have a good past. He was a guy that worked in the stables. He used to watch horse. He used to tend to horses. This was his job. He got this malchut, this kingdom by fluke. Okay? So he wanted to build a chair, a throne that he could, sit on as now that he's king, and he wanted everybody to know that, look at this throne. The only place that they had craftsmen, skilled craftsmen to build such a throne was Shushan. It was known, like Hamilton is the steel city, so Shushan was the throne city. That's where everybody built the big chairs, the furniture city. Okay? Now he built this gigantic throne. And the problem was, he couldn't transport the throne. It was stuck there. It was so heavy, he couldn't move it across city to city. So, what was he going to do? Brilliant idea. I'm going to make Shushan the capital. Shushan and Sudbury now is going to become the capital of the country. Okay? And this is where I'm going to sit. All why? So that the throne should stay there. But what's the truth? Behind the scenes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is planting the Geulah. Because who lived in Shushan? Mordechai. Mordechai Yehudi was the one who lives in Shushan. Ish Yehudi Haya beShushan Abira. That's where Mordechai was there. So instead of transferring Mordechai to wherever Ahashverosh was going to be, God transfers Ahashverosh and all of his buddies to where Mordechai lives. And how much we need to recognize and praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu for this alone. The Megilat tells us that on that night when Mordechai sends Esther to attempt to save the lives of the Jewish people, and she wasn't sure whether or not he was going to accept it. Pasuk says, the king sees Esther sitting in the garden. Right? He found grace in his eyes. She found grace in his eyes. Says the Gemara, says the Midrash, Three things happened at that moment. 3 angels came to assist Esther at that moment. Remember, she was fasting for 3 days. No food, no drink. What happened? One of them, Higbiat Savara. She didn't have strength to lift up her head. So an angel came and lifted up her head. Echad mashach chut shel chesed alea. The other one did some magic potion, and she looked beautiful in his eyes. And the third one, shematachet asharvit. The third one stretched the scepter all the way to her. And the Midrash says, how much did the scepter stretch? Shishim amah, 30 meters. Already from a distance across the hall, the scepter stretched and allowed Esther to come in. So some of the Baalei Musar... Yeah. So some of the Baalei Musar says, look how crazy Ahashverosh is. Okay? If anybody in their right mind sees their own staff and their own scepter stretched for 30 meters, 60 amot, they'd faint on the floor. They wouldn't believe it. What just happened in their lives. They go absolutely nuts. And he pays absolutely no attention to it. He sees nothing. He sees no miracle. What does he see? Her beauty. Hashem wants only to see her beauty. Nasachen be'ainav. He sees nothing else. This, a woman who has been, for lack of a better term, totally insulting this man for how long? Refuses to tell him where she's from over and over and over again. Shows no care and no love for him. Is only there because Mordechai told her he has to be there. And yet, he can see. He just sees beauty. He just sees chen. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no. I'm in charge over here. He's running everything, and this is how the Geulah is supposed to come about. Just a little bit on how much we have to be appreciative and praise Hashem for the constant miracles we see in this story. Ahashverosh, 3 years into his reign, makes this big feast. Why does he make a big feast? So Chachamim tell us, because based on a pasuk in Sefer Daniel, who writes that the exile was supposed to last for 70 years. After the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, it was supposed to last for 70 years. And now, after that he saw that 70 years passed, and the Jews were still under his rulership, and God did not come to redeem him. Okay, so he said, beautiful. Let's take out all the vessels of the Beit HaMikdash, and let's have a big party. Where did he get these vessels? These are the vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had kept, and they made this huge party with lots of wine. There's a book called Manot HaLevi. It was written by Rabbi Shlomo Elkabetz. Shlomo Alkabetz was the author of the Lecha Dodi. I actually quoted him this past Shabbat. It's a very popular book on Megilat Esther, Perush. Why is he called Manot HaLevi? He explains, because in the olden days, on Purim, anyone who was engaged would go and buy a gift for their fiancé. Alright? On Purim, they would bring a gift. We're looking forward to our lives together. He was so poor. Okay? He had no money. He had no money to give to his fiancé. So, what did he do? Okay? He says, I wrote this book. And then he gives his wife, his fiancé, this book. Manot. What's Mishloach Manot? A gift of the Levi. Okay, he was a Levi. Shlomo Alkabetz. He said, here, this is the gift that I have. On the year that he was engaged to his wife. Anyways, there in the book, he writes the source on how Ahashverosh got all of his money. And he says, Nebuchadnezzar was super rich man, super rich, and he got all the spoils from the Jewish people, but he was also super stingy. He did not want to give away any of his wealth. So what did he do when he was about to die? He didn't want to give it to his son. His son was a man named Evil Merodach in Hebrew. Evil Merodach, 2 names. That was his, or maybe 1 name, but that was the name of his son. He didn't even want to give his son to inherit all of his wealth. So he built ships out of nechoshet, of iron, and loaded them with gold, and the ships sank out of the weight. They just sank in the Euphrates river. The day that Koresh decided that he was going to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu performed a miracle, and all these ships came up land, and Koresh took all of it. He made a decision to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash. He took all this money. This is Koresh number 1. Koresh's son was Ahashverosh, and Ahashverosh took all of Koresh's, wealth. And that's how he was able to have this money. So you see, the Osram, the wealth of the kings, says Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, comes from the destruction of others. They destroy others, they conquer others, and they take the wealth and the spoils. And especially these spoils came from the destruction of Yerushalayim. In the Midrash, they relate a story of a highway robber that came and stole two mini boats. And he stole from other people. But they captured this robber. And they brought him to Alexander the Great. Alexander Mogdon. He was the king of Greece. And he lived at the time of the second Bet HaMikdash. And they said, Alexander the Great said, you're going to jail. Why am I going to jail? You're going to jail for highway robbery. You robbed these guys of their boats. And he says, the man said to them, what are you talking about? I stole a little bit. You are the biggest thief. So he tells Alexander the Great. He goes, you're calling me a thief? You say I'm a thief? He goes, yeah. You conquered nations. You conquered countries. And all your people took all the possessions of the countries that you conquered. You killed people and you took their money. You're saying that I'm a thief? You're the biggest thief there is in the world. Alexander the Great realized right away that this guy was right. And he said, leave him alone. Don't put him in jail. Because that's where he's going to go. He's going to go with spreading the word that that we're taking money from people, which is in fact true. So Ahashverosh was worried that people were going to call him a gazlan. So he needed a remedy to this. He needed some sort of a fix. So what did he do? None of this is from mine. Look at all the glasses and the gold and the silver we have. This is from Nebuchadnezzar. He calls it, this is from the Babylonian emperor. It's all from Beharoto. It's Osher Kevod Malchuto. This Osher is all from him. Now at this Sa'udah, at this Mishteh, we're still on the Manot Levi, the Rav Shlomo Alkabetz. He asks an unbelievable question. He says, at every wedding that you're at, you find your hall, you find your caterer, you find flowers, everything, clothing, the preparation for weddings we all remember. And there's one part of the wedding that is a big part of the wedding, which is the orchestra, the tizmoret. In fact, speaking for myself, it was the only part of the wedding that I wanted to get involved in. I didn't really care for flowers, I didn't really care for tablecloths, none of that stuff really bothered me. But the orchestra, I wanted to make sure that the orchestra was, the type of music and who was going to be playing, because I know that brings a simcha. For 180 days, Ahashverosh has this mishteh, beautiful mishteh, with gorgeous cutlery and tableware and design and decor and tablecloths, the best wine in the world. Where's the orchestra? Where's the music? You ask a good question. There's no music. Why is there no music? So Manot HaLevi, Rav Shlomo Kabetz says, to answer this question, I'm going to ask another question. He says, when you have a little baby, an infant, just born, or in his first year, starts crying, what does a mom do? Mom picks up his child and starts singing lullabies to the baby. And through the lullabies, through the songs that the mother sings, the baby falls asleep beautifully, peacefully, and the mom puts him back to bed. If a person is older, in his 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and he can't fall asleep and he's crying, he's in bed, whatever it is, do you think music helps? It's the exact opposite. You're trying to sleep, you can't sleep. I don't want any noise. I want total silence. Any little noise whatsoever, I can't sleep. Shh, quiet down, no, lower that TV, right? Screaming at your kids, lower that music, lower that TV. I'm trying to rest, fall asleep. What happened? What happened from when you're a little kid that music soothes you, puts you to bed, and when you are an adult, you can't take any noise? What changes? Asked Rav Shlomo Kabetz. He says, let me tell you something. He says, when the neshama is in Shamayim, all you hear are the songs of angels. And all the neshamot in Shamayim are hearing this music. And the neshama, the soul of a young boy or girl, when they're small and they hear that song, that lullaby from their mom, it reminds them of the music they used to hear in Shamayim by the angels. And therefore right away, this is bliss. This is the most unbelievable feeling. And they go right back to sleep. And you know what happens when you sleep, right? Part of your neshama goes back to Shamayim. But when a person gets older, he distances himself from what was. The older you are, the further away you are from where you went before you came to this world. So your neshama is no longer used to that singing anymore. And therefore, it just bothers you. It's not making an impact on me. What? Yeah, but you're too far away, you're too far distance from what it was when you were earlier in your years, you're just born. But as you get older, there's one exception though, which is Shabbat. Shabbat, we get a neshama yetera. We get an extra neshama, and that's why on Shabbat, every Jew loves the songs. They love the piyutim. They like the zmirot, Kira Shmena Shabbat, Deror Yikra, Yoduchar Ayonai, the Mawalim, right? All the things that we sing is Shabbat because we get that extra neshama. So we feel it more than we do during the rest of the week. And if you look at all the weddings, you know, who are the people at the wedding that most enjoy the music? It's the young crowd. The younger you are, the more you enjoy, the more you're dancing, the more. You get older, like, too much headache, it's too loud, why does the guy have to put the music, please, like, oh, come on, lower the music, I can't with my ears anymore. And the young guys, they're dancing, they're jumping, they're into it. Because for them, again, it's closer to what was. So, back to our story. The Gemara says, and we'll quote this Gemara a few times, they asked Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, why did the Jews deserve this decree of annihilation? What did they do? So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, because they had benefit from the seudah of this rasha, of this evil man Ahashverosh. The purpose of Ahashverosh was to get them to do something that was going to cause their annihilation. We're going to get to this question later. And so he wanted them to enjoy the seudah. Ahashverosh was a very, very clever man. And he was worried, if I bring a tizmoret, if I bring an orchestra to the seudah, what's going to happen? They're going to hear the music, they're going to hear the shira, and they're going to enjoy the music, and they're not going to enjoy the seudah, because they're going to be so much involved in the music. So that's why I said, everything I'm working for, my whole goal and purpose and objective, is going to go out the window, because they're not going to enjoy the food, they're not going to enjoy the seudah, they're going to enjoy the music, and going to start dancing with the music. So that's why Dafka, on Purim, what do? We sit around the table and we sing. We sing Pizmonim, we sing Piyutim. Why? V'nafochu. Ahashverosh wanted us not to listen to music so that we should enjoy the Seudah. Now, Dafka, I'm going to bring music. I'm going to sing at my Seudah. That's why it's a very important inyan on Purim, on the night of Purim, to sing at your Seudah, to be me'apech what Ahashverosh wanted us, which is not to enjoy the music at the Seudah. There's another answer that the Al-Shich HaKadosh brings. He says, Al-Shich HaKadosh says, that Ahashverosh caused us, he wanted us to enjoy the Seudah with 4 out of our 5 senses. With our smell, with our nose, with the smell, he made us sit in the Hatzar Beito, in the garden. And when you're in the garden, you're among trees and flowers that you can, spring is in the air. Here in Canada, today we felt it. Spring is in the air, it's coming, and the flowers blooming. So the part of the enjoyment of the Seudah was with the chus of the reyach, which is the sense of smell. What about the re'iyah? With our eyes. Right? The Pasuk says, Chur, Karpas, Utchelet, Achuz, Bechavlevut, Vargaman, the drapery, the colors, everything, every color in the world. Imagine what you saw over there in this banquet hall, so that we would walk in and say, wow. You couldn't just help, when I was in France, in Paris, I traveled to see the Palace de Versailles. Alright? Anyone that ever been there. And you just go in there to see what this palace was. Gold, bronze, colors, paintings. It's the most incredible home that might be around today. And people paid to visit this, to see what this palace was. I can imagine Ahashverosh's palace was something like this. And this is how he draped and dressed his ulam, his banquet hall, so that people can see with vision, chush, areyah, the sense of sight they would enjoy. Then you had the misus, you had the touch, zahav, mitot, zahav, v'chesef. They would be sitting on these luxury recliners made out of silver and gold and lazy boy furniture. They felt like they were a king. And lastly, ta'am, taste. There was the best foods in the world. There was the best drinks in the world. V'yen machut rav ki yad hamelech, except with hearing. The only sense that they did not enjoy was hearing. So the Al-Shich asked the same question. Where was the orchestra? Where was the music? Why didn't he bring music? So the answer that he gives is because music is something very personal. And the Seudah was meant to be made la'asot kirtzon ish va'ish, according to the will of every person. Some people like dance music. Some people like slow music. Some people like Ashkenazi music. Some people like Moroccan music. Some people like Yerushalmi music. Some people like slow kumzitz songs, right? To get you into the mood. And since you cannot appease everybody with your music, so therefore Ahashverosh says, no music. I just want everybody to enjoy without the music. So now, look at the Hidush of the Al-Shich. How this idea, what Ahashverosh thought that he was going to appease every person by not bringing music, actually was the Kickstarter for the Geulah. Because as we know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is makdim the refuah to the makkah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu always brings the healing before the malady. The remedies before the malady. You think that I'm sick and now I need a healing. The healing's already there. The cure is already there. How so? Well, look what the Pasuk says. After all these things, Haman was raised. What does it mean after all these things? So the Midrash says, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu already set in motion the Geulah, the healing that was going to come. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't give a makkah, he won't give a plague if the Geulah is already set in place. The fact that there was no tizmoret, the fact that there was no orchestra, was the beginning of the Geulah. Because in order for the Jews to be saved, we needed Esther to be queen. In order for Esther to be queen, we needed Ahashverosh to kill Vashti. In order that Ahashverosh kill Vashti, she needed to refuse his request. In order for her to refuse his request, he needed to have a discussion and an argument among all of his ministers that were present there at that time. And Ahashverosh commanded her to come, and she refused to come. But if there was a tizmoret, if there was music and an orchestra playing, you wouldn't be able to hear the discussion. You wouldn't be able to hear the conversation or the fight among the ministers. What should we do with her for refusing and disobeying the command? How would Mehuman, Bizda, Charvona, Bikta, Vavakta, Zeta, Vecharkas, all these people that the Megilat mentions, how could they have that argument if no one's paying attention to them? You ever sit at a wedding and try to have a conversation on the table?
This was at the same time.
This was at that moment, at that Suda. At the same time. You're at a wedding, you're sitting at a table, the music is blaring, can you even hear what your friend's saying? You can't hear. You're yelling, even when you're yelling, you can't hear. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting in place no tizmoret. Why? So that we could hear the discussion. And if you hear the discussion, Ahashverosh says, okay, I'm going to agree with Haman. And by agreeing with Haman, I'm going to kill Vashi. Now I kill Vashi, bring in Esther, and the rest is history. That's the answer of the Al-Shikh. As we said, we call in the Gemara that they asked Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, why is it that they deserve Kelaya? Why do the Jewish people deserve annihilation? So, the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, because they were neheneh from the Seudah. They enjoyed from that Seudah. So, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, sorry, I take that back. Rabbi Shimon answered, you tell me why. Why did they deserve? And he said, because they deserve they took benefit from the Seudah. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai told the students, if that's the case, then why is the whole Jewish population? Only the Jews living in Shushan should be the ones that are punished. Why are you punishing all the Jews across all 127 provinces? So they answered him, okay, Rabbi, you tell us. What's the answer? So he said, because the Jews bowed down to the image of Nebuchadnezzar. Erected was an image of Nebuchadnezzar, and the Jews bowed down. So the students heard this. They said, well, if that's the case, are we showing favoritism? Then they deserve to die. If you're bowing down to an image of Nebuchadnezzar, then why is God coming to save them? He should wipe him out. Good question, yeah? So, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai answered, Hem lo asu ela lefanim. They only bowed down outwardly. They didn't really intend to worship it. They were like just doing it out of fear. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu also acted with them outwardly and only wanted to instill fear in them. But it wasn't a decree that was going to wipe them out. It wasn't actual Avodah Zarah. They only bowed down out of fear. So God said, I'm just going to scare you. That was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's answer. So Chachamim say we learn from here a very important lesson. Sometimes we perform averot, we perform sins, and a person might do this averah only outwardly. Doesn't really intend to do it, but he justifies himself. Well, I didn't really mean to do it. I didn't have that kavanah, so what I did really wasn't so bad. And there's nothing really wrong by doing this, even though my intent was not so. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing this generation, or the generation of Purim, what it means to do an Averah outwardly. That I'm going to do something to you where you're not going to be able to sleep at night. Where there's going to be a decree of a man calling out for your death and destruction. And I want to see how you're going to be going about your day-to-day life. And what's going to happen. And even after if you pay attention, even after everything seems to be done, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still, Kviyachol, laughing upstairs, in this outward decree. Once the decree was sent out, Mordechai and Esther find out. What do? Everyone's going to fast for 3 days. Right? Everyone's going to fast for 3 days. These 3 days happen to be over the holiday of Pesach. Already on day number 3, that's when Esther goes into Ahashverosh's palace, and the next day they have Seudah with Haman, and Haman is killed. Already. 4 days and Haman's a dead man. And Esther goes to the Ahashverosh with Mordechai to plead for, let's write new letters, because these Haman's letters are out. Let's write new letters so that we can nullify the decree. But Ahashverosh says we can't do it. What's written is written. So the first messengers are still going out to the 127 countries, delivering the first letter of Haman, and Haman's already dead. So think about this for a moment. In Shushan, Mordechai already went on a horse with wearing king clothing. This is before Haman's dead. Everyone's celebrating Mordechai as this amazing guy. Within a couple days, Haman's a dead man. And the rest of the nation is just receiving letters that the Jews are about to be destroyed. They're all mourning. They have no idea what's going on in Shushan. Half of the world is happy for the Jews. Half the world is mourning and in total state of shock and sadness of what's about to come, and they're about to fast. That's lefanim. That's God outwardly showing you. And in fact, some say this is one of the reasons why we wear costumes on Purim, is because costume is an outward appearance. That the whole Averah was, and the Gzera, the whole decree was done because of how we acted outwardly. So therefore, we wear this fake outwardly costume, because it's not who we really are. But to show you that a person should never, God forbid, think, oh yes, my actions, I don't really mean it inside. It's just something that I do on the outside. Because look how Hashem responded in His outward response that kept the people there shaking. This meal was set up in a way, like we mentioned, Ahashverosh wanted to make everybody happy. La'asot kirtzon ish va'ish. So what is the ish ve'ish? So Mefarshim explain, ish is Haman and ish is Mordechai. Haman is ish tsar ve'oyev. When Esther pointed at him, says, this evil enemy man. And Mordechai is also ish. Ish Yehudi aya b'Shushan abira. So the Gemara explains that Haman was in charge of all the non-kosher food, and Mordechai was in charge of all the kosher food. So all the Jewish people went to Mordechai. They got the invitation in the mail, paperless post or email, and they said, you are invited to the feast of Ahashverosh for 7 days and 180 days. And they go to Mordechai. Mordechai, you're the leader. Do we go or we don't go? And Mordechai says, you don't go. Don't go to this feast. Still, the Midrash says, 18,500 Jews attended that feast. 18,500. The Mefarshim ask, if the food is kosher, then what's wrong going? We said Mordechai was in charge of the kashrut. He was the hashgacha. He made sure that there was kosher food because he wanted one. So why was it gzera? Why was it so bad the Jewish people went if they had kosher food? Leads us back to the question that they asked Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai asked, okay, so students, tell me, what was the problem? So he said, nehene. They enjoyed from the seudah. So we see from here, from this conversation with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, sitting at that meal and enjoying that meal was enough of a reason for at least the Jews of Shushan to be annihilated. Yes, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai then asked, but what about the rest of the Jews in the world? But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai agreed that the Jews of Shushan deserve to be annihilating for sitting over there. Why? Why have this decree of annihilation for sitting at a seudah? The Gemara Masechet Avodah Zarah brings a story. The Gemara says that Rava once brought a korban to a goy named Bar Sheshach. And he knew that the goy was not going to bring this korban to his idolatry. Anyways, when he went to bring the animal, he found this Bar Sheshach sitting in this bed of roses, garden of roses, surrounded by women dressed inappropriately, and who knows what he was doing with these women. The Goy asked Rava, do you have such an oneg, a pleasure like this in Olam Haba, in your Olam Haba? Do you think you have such oneg? And Rava answered him that the oneg, the enjoyment and the pleasure that I'm going to experience in the next world is much bigger than this oneg. So the Goy looks at Rava, he says, come on, kidding me? Look what I'm experiencing right now. So Rava says, let me tell you why. Because you have pachad ha-malchut. You fear the kingdom. Even as you're sitting right now, you fear the kingdom. In Olam Haba, in the next world, there is no fear of a king down on earth. So the Goy says, what kingdom do I fear? What kingdom do I fear? The Gemara explains that immediately a guy came knocking onto the door of this Bar Sheshach and says that the king wants to talk to you. The king wants to talk to you. And on his way out, he looked at Rava and he said, he actually gave him a compliment. He says, the eye, hamit'ava lirot ra'atchem te'aker. The eye that desires to see your evil shall be uprooted. Because I see that God fulfills your request. And Rava answered, Amen. And to that Amen, the Gemara says, immediately the eye of Bar Sheshach uprooted from his actual eye socket. And then, because he himself wanted to see the evil amongst the Jewish people. You can't enjoy life when you fear the king. And that was what Rava was trying to transmit to this man. You think you're enjoying life, but on top of you, you have a fear for the king. Imagine you're sitting down at this amazing meal. You're at a restaurant, and you're enjoying beautiful steak dinner with very expensive wine. All the luxury, beautiful, I'm telling you, the best food ever. All of a sudden, comes in member of the CRA, or the IRS, for those listening in the United States. And they come in and go, hi, Mr. Goldman? Yes. Hi, we're from the CRA. We have a few questions to ask you. So you're looking at him, and you're like, I'm just in the middle, oh, no. Go ahead. Enjoy your meal. We'll talk to you afterwards. You know what? Call us when you're done. Let me ask you a question. You think that guy's going to enjoy his meal? Not a chance. His whole meal, he's going to be like this. You know, thinking about the phone call that he now has to make to the CRA. Far-fetched? Okay, fine. Maybe they won't come knocking at a restaurant door. But it could very well be he received something in the mail that morning or that afternoon from a CRA. Hi, we're just looking into your finances. You're being audited. All of a sudden the guy is freaking out. How can you enjoy your meal? How can you enjoy anything knowing that the government is on top of you? The reason why the people of Shushan were not punished because they joined the meal. Because the food was kosher. They were punished because they enjoyed the meal. Being part of the meal is one thing. Enjoying the meal is something else. You're seeing the kelim of the Bet HaMikdash in front of you. You feel like you're forced to be there. Said that you're forced to be there. But why enjoy? Why show the king that you really want to be? That shows that you don't have fear for the king above. That's what the Maharsha says. The Maharsha is an unbelievable chidush. The Gemara asks, where do we see in the Torah Esther HaMalka? Where is Esther hinted in the Torah? So the Gemara asks, Anochi Aster Astir et Panai. I will hide my face. And the whole story of Megilat Esther is really Hashem hiding his face. Says the Maharsha, don't read it that way. When the Gemara asks, where do you see Esther in the Torah? What it's really asking is, where do we see the claim against the Jewish people during the era of Esther, during the generation of Esther? And the answer is, Ve'anochi Haster Astir. the Anochi Hashem Loecha, the 10 Commandments, the mitzvah of recognizing Hashem, being present in your lives everywhere that you go, Haser Asir was hidden from you. That's the mistake. That's where you lost it. That you failed to recognize that there's Hashem above you. That there's Hashem watching over you. That you were able to go into a seudah and eat there and drink there, kilu God doesn't even exist.
Like with farm Jews?
Maybe. That's if God doesn't exist. If God is not an integral part of your life. If Anochi Hashem Elohecha is not front and foremost in your life, that's what's lost. That's what's hidden in front of you. Because why not judge them lekaf zechut? Why not give them the benefit of the doubt? Maybe they wanted to get on the good side of the king. That makes sense. We have Jewish officials around the world that are very close to the king. Hey, you know what? Especially in the anti-Semitism, let's get on the president's good side. Let's get on the prime minister's good side or the king's good side. We want to show them that we care about the economy and we're active participants in the country and we want to make the country good. We want to show you in a good light. Why not be done the chavzachut? And again, why is this worthy of destruction? And the food was kosher. All these questions only solidify the fact that there was no problem with the Jews being there. So why all the commotion? Why all the fuss? Why the decree? In the days of communist Russia, Jews used to be forcefully taken to join in the Russian army, where there was no adherence to mitzvot, no adherence to kashrut, nothing. No kosher food whatsoever. And even if you tried to pay off a Russian soldier or general to get you kosher food, you were risking your life. Because if he said no, he'd shoot you on the spot. So they went up to Rav Yisrael Salanter and they asked him a she'elah. He said, Rabbi, I have no other choice. I'm going to be drafted in the army. There is no kosher food. Am I allowed to eat from the kosher food? Rav Yisrael Salanter says, Mutar lachem le'echol. Of course, you're allowed to eat from the kosher food, from the non-kosher food. You're allowed to eat from the terefah. You have to save your life. But he said, Al timsetzu et ha'atzamot. Don't suck the bones. Eat the food because you need to survive. Don't sit there and suck your fingers when you're done. And that's what it is. Yes, you have to eat at the seudah of Ahashverosh. He's the king. He's inviting you there. Not going might have been a chilul Hashem. But sitting there and enjoying it so much and sipping and laughing and with the kelim of the Bet HaMikdash, that is asur. That's the enjoyment. That's what Hashem says, now I see that I'm not really a part of your lives. And that's why the Gezerah came. So much so that if it wasn't for the teshuvah, if it wasn't for the fasting, who knows what would have been the end result. And that, I think, is one of the major lessons as we go. Many of us deal with, goyim on a regular basis. We have the government, we have our colleagues, we have work partners. There's goyim all around us. And sometimes we want to be respectful. And they come, let's go. Okay, said there, let's have a beer, whatever it is. But how far, to what extent? Is it to the extent that you totally forget about Kadosh Baruch Hu? If that's the case, that's a big problem. You had benefit and you enjoyed from that seudah of that rasha, that evil man, who the Megilat does not portray as an evil man, but he was evil. He was Ahashverosh, a man just as bad as Nebuchadnezzar. He just wasn't successful in doing so. So if we have these lessons in mind, we come this Purim, we sing our hearts away, because we know that was the start of the Geulah, God putting His plan in motion. We recognize how holy we are, how lucky we are to have a God that cares for us, that is directing everything that we do, so that we can experience a Geulah. For that, Bezat Hashem, we will be Zoche to the ultimate final Geulah. Bezat Hashem soon, B'mena b'yamenu. Wishing everybody here a Chag Purim Sameach, and all of our listeners, enjoy your time, enjoy your drinks, enjoy the Simcha. The Yain Yisamach Levav Enosh. The heart of a person is gladdened by the drinking of wine and meat and good food. Because for the sake of Hashem, not for the sake of Oto Rasha, we be Zoche to Yeshua. Shalom, B'minav Yameinu. Amen. Ken Yiratzon.